Hello, and in this lesson, we're going to discuss the difference between two different types of elastic load balancing that you can choose from when using Amazon Web Services. Those are the classic elastic load balancer and the newer application load balancer. So over here in the AWS console, let's click on EC2, then click on Load Balancers, and then click on Create a Load Balancer. And the first option that you have to choose from is to choose between either an application load balancer and a classic load balancer. But what are the differences between the two, and what are the benefits of one versus the other, and when should you use one versus the other? Well, over here on the Orion papers, let's click on our elastic load balancer, and let's first click on classic elastic load balancer. So classic elastic load balancer is something that is designed for simple balancing of traffic to multiple EC2 instances. There are no granular routing rules, as all instances get routed to evenly, and no special routing requests can be made based on specific content requests from the user. So a classic load balancer is best used when all instances that are being served traffic to contain the same data. So if we have a user up here and they want to request something from our application, the request comes into the elastic load balancer, in this case the classic elastic load balancer, and that traffic will be served to any one of the four instances that are running the current web application. But when using a classic elastic load balancer, all of the content must be the same across all of the instances running the application. Because again, the request comes in and is just going to be sent to one of these four based on how traffic is currently being distributed between those four. There could be no specific request coming from the user to point to one particular EC2 instance or another, again, because they all have the same content. So now let's take a look at the application elastic load balancer. Now we're going to notice first the diagram here is slightly different, but an application elastic load balancer is designed for complex balancing of traffic to multiple EC2 instances using content-based rules. So content-based rules set up on the listener can be configured using host-based rules, and this is where we route traffic based on the host field of the HTTP header, or path-based rules, which is where we route traffic based on the URL path of the HTTP header. So what does this do? Well, this allows you to structure your application as smaller services and even monitor or auto-scale based on traffic to specific target groups. So what are target groups? Well, let's get into that down here when we look at our diagram. So what we can do is we can set up EC2 instances in different target groups, and we can segregate those target groups based on specific content. So we can take our application and break it up into several segments. So we can have a part of our application that handles requests for picture content. This is an example. Or we can have then also a target group set up with EC2 instances that are specifically set up to handle video content. So when a request comes in from the user in the HTTP header, that request can signify either, hey, I want picture content or I want video content. So then what it will do is, let's say for this instance that the request comes in asking for picture content, the elastic load balancer will serve the traffic over to this target group. And then when it gets into that target group, it will then load balance based off of evenly distributing the traffic between the two. So again, when we look at the classic load balancer here, traffic comes in and it will be distributed amongst the four. All four have to have the same content. But here we have four EC2 instances. Two of them are handling picture content and two of them are handling video content. So you don't need to have picture content loaded onto these instances, and you don't need video content loaded onto these two instances. But when traffic comes in for picture content, it will get routed to this target group and then be evenly distributed between those two EC2 instances, or however many instances you have in that particular target group. So again, this allows us to break up our application into smaller chunks and serve traffic only to specific instances that are handling that segment or that section of your particular application. This allows us then to monitor specifically only target groups, so we can monitor just one section of our application. And we can also auto scale based off of that one section. So obviously, if we're getting a lot of picture content, or a lot of requests for picture content, then we can auto scale just inside of this target group. So we can auto scale just this target group while not auto scaling any of this target group. So again, we can just auto scale based off of where content is specifically going to, where under the classic elastic load balancer, We could be getting a whole bunch of picture content, but we're going to have to auto scale out and load picture and video content on all of the EC2 instances. So this gives us a lot more granularity and a lot more control over how traffic is routed inside our application, and also how we can monitor and auto scale based on those traffic demands. Now, an application elastic load balancer also supports EC2 containers, HTTPS, HTTP2, WebSockets, access log, sticky sections, and AWS WAF, or Web Application Firewall. So it holds a lot of additional benefits over the classic elastic load balancer. So again, you should use the classic elastic load balancer if you have an application where all of the EC2 instances will be holding or running the exact same content. But you want to use an application load balancer if you want to be able to create target groups and break your application up into smaller chunks and be able to serve traffic dynamically to those specific EC2 instances running very specific services for your application. And again, the application load balancer gives you a lot more granularity in terms of directing traffic, but then also monitoring and getting detailed information about those particular target groups and those instances in those target groups, then also being able to auto scale just inside those specific target groups, meaning that obviously the demand coming in for picture content will then allow you to auto scale out just the EC2 instances for picture content. So those are the two different options that you have when selecting an elastic load balancer in AWS. And again, those are the classic elastic load balancer and the application elastic load balancer. And with that, we will conclude this lesson. Thank you for watching. You may now move on.